Thank you for joining us. We're finding God in video games. I say we because it's just me. But normally my wife would be here, but she set up this wonderful ministry spotlight opportunity for us with Anilujah. And I know that, so you're to my left, Josh and Rebecca, that is the faces of this incredible ministry. And I just wanted to get to know you a little bit more and share more about your message and your ministry and what you do. So first, could you just give us an idea of where the idea for this came from to do this incredible ministry you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you once again for having us. We're very blessed to be here, and we appreciate what you guys are doing. We've heard the other ministries, Beneath the Tangles, Finding God in anime, and then of course Finding God in video games. All of you which do incredible jobs of reaching the world for Christ through these different types of mediums. Originally, Anilujah was going to start out as just a blog. It wasn't going to be a podcast. It was just going to be a written blog. So we thought, well, why? I mean, we watch animated movies and TV shows just on our own, and we had a lot to say about it. So why not get our thoughts on audio and the video portion of the podcast having come to fruition? That wouldn't come until about a year or two later. And I remember going through names. Annalie, believe it or not, was not the first choice. Rebecca, do you want to tell them my great idea what I thought it would be?
Oh yeah, the very one of the very first ideas that Josh presented was Antichrist. And I was like, Josh, I don't know. I don't think that one's gonna, take off at like you want it to. It's too close to
I
Antichrist.
would say there's a lot of misspellings that could get you a lot of direction, but I'm not sure your content is going to be exactly what they were going to be looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we then went back to the drawing board, and Rebecca actually did the logo
Mhm.
for what it is now. So she's very talented in calligraphy and art. So it was great to just, it was obvious to have her jump on board in that aspect. I was still going to do it solo, but then another idea I had, well, I need a kind of like a female warm tone to kind of like bring people in and then also carry them out. So the intro and outro had her that could come in. We did a few takes and started thinking again. I really like how that sounds. Let's do a few test recordings with just us. I mean, we talk, we play well off one another. So let's see how it goes. Um, We did the first few test recordings and like, okay, that's it. You're a part of it. We're gonna do this weekly. um, the first few recordings we did, I don't have anymore, unfortunately.
Trying to be
Um,
a perfectionist,
I
Josh.
was trying to do well because I want to be like right out of the gate. Like if you go back and listen to episode number one, there is a drastic change between episode one and episode 10. And but it's nice. I'm not necessarily like ashamed or well, ashamed's not the word. I'm not necessarily like well, yeah, I'll use for lack of a better term, like ashamed of the previous audio quality. It's just that I know that we've come such a long way. When I tell people about our podcast, I'm like, yeah, listen to Just a Can Dreams. Number one is our most popular, and number two, that's where we really got more audio quality as an upgrade. Um, But that this is a long roundabout way to say what it is that we do. So we do a weekly podcast centered around animated movies and TV shows, and we usually have about two or three themes or two or three bullet points that we take out from a series or a film, and we go through those 3 points, and we go ahead and draw and grab biblical parallels and these scripture references. And it may not always seem like there's a direct correlation, but we find that there's so much in these stories that you can make a case for anything really. Like we just recently did Vinland Saga that has a bunch of Christian imagery and a bunch
Awesome.
of just scriptural references. And that was all about Thorfinn's path to, well, somewhat redemption.
He's on his path to it anyway.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I know that we talk to people that have a passion around maybe a specific fandom, such as y'all shared. Ours is in the video game realm. You have that animation piece. You mentioned there's a lot of content creators out there that kind of have their little niches. But how did you know that the Lord was calling you to take that specific passion and turn it into something that you could use to share his messaging rather than simply being a hobby that you shared?
Mm.
So, Rebecca, do you want to kind of like take that one?
Yeah, I can. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It kind of like was a slow morphing, I gotta say, from having this thing that's just really fun that we're doing. And then talking about God. Hey, that's really fun. We already have these conversations anyway. And then realizing, oh my gosh, we are really talking about the gospel every single episode because that's just kind of what's inside of us and that's what comes out. And so it kind of morphed into, oh, let's be more intentional about this, to make sure that anyone who's listening, who's just kind of like the Easter and Christmas Christians who might be like, yeah, I'm a Christian, and they listen to this podcast, they're getting so much more than just talking about the animated movies and TV shows. And so we started becoming much more intentional over time. I would say that happened definitely within the first year. We were like, yeah, this needs to be more of like a true ministry because that's really what we're doing and that's what we care about people. And I've got a background. I think when we started, I was actually doing a program for biblical counseling, and so my heart is for people to see them, and I want to see them in the darkest times so that then I can offer hope and just be there with people. So that's what I was doing at the time was the biblical counseling program. Now I've actually moved into a true like master's program to be a counselor. And there's kind of a difference, Christian counselor and counselor. Anyway, there's nuances, but but it just is so important to me. And I think that to me, this is part of that. This is part of sharing the gospel and being with people perhaps in their darkest times, because so many times when we're looking at these stories, these movies, these TV shows, we're meeting people in their darkest time, in a time of change, because that's what makes an interesting story, right? So, so that was really fun to be able, and is, we're still doing it, is fun to really be um, in the midst of these people's difficulties and to speak life into them if they were real people, and hopefully that then speaks to our listeners.
Absolutely. And so I love that you shared kind of the vulnerability around, the first, I call it the first pancake syndrome, the first few things that we did in it, you're like, oh, I don't want to eat that pancake. Someone's got to, I'm not going to waste it. But the second one will be better and the third one will be flawless. So I know that when we started ours out, I cringe at some of my original writing and some of the original, like, I don't even know if I can listen to it. And I made it. So what would your advice be to someone who wants to start out and maybe they've done that first drawing or they've done that first recording? They wrote and they're just like, I want to do this for the Lord, but I hate every little bit of what I just created, and encourage them to go to that second step and third step and find the success like you're able to experience, where you have a lot more confidence in what you're doing now that you've moved through those first few tough pancakes.
Yeah, absolutely, certainly. So, my advice would be just embrace your first take. It's gonna suck. It's not gonna go the way that you want it to go, but pick up the pieces, pick out what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to keep doing, what you want to stop doing. It's going to take you a bit. Like, we didn't really find our rhythm until I think like episode 20 when we really had like a good solid format down. And with things like AI coming about and different tools that we've used. Like we've revamped our entire workflow just in the past few months with the influence that it's had in helping us prep and doing our own research. And I would say once you're getting started out, now again, I didn't take my own advice, but for anybody else who's considering doing this, use the equipment that you have, whether it's your phone, whether it is a microphone and you have a audio interface that can be plugged into a computer, whether it's a Elgato Wave mic, whether it's a Audio Technica that's plugged into a Scarlett 2i2 or a 2i, and using GarageBand, Audacity. These tools, while they're not, quote unquote, pro level, they're going to get you, started. They're going to get you off the right foot. Like we still use Audacity for our audio editing. It's a great tool. We love to use it. Um, but beyond that, focus on your niche. Why should people listen to your podcast versus another podcast that may offer a similar a similar niche? And so again, using the equipment that you have, honing in on your niche, and embracing the stuff that may not work. Like we've scrapped episodes before just because we didn't feel confident about it. Like, hey, it's a great conversation. We just don't feel that it's going to be the right niche for what we want to put out. So we'll come back a few hours later, do it again, and it's better. So whenever you're doing a creative endeavor, you're always going to hit speed bumps. There's always going to be a bit of roadblocks. How you navigate around those is what's going to determine your success.
Yeah, and I would like to add too, it reminds me of when you were in elementary school and you have your art teacher, right, who is looking at that piece of paper and inside they're like, "No, do not ask for another piece of paper if you messed up." So they tell you they tell you take that mistake whatever you made and turn it into something beautiful and use that in your new drawing. And I think that's pretty applicable to any creative endeavor that you have. Use what you have is okay. And then you will grow it and change it into morph it into something that you do really like and enjoy. And it may take a little bit of time. It'll be rough for a little bit, just like any painting process. If you've ever done any kind of painting or drawing, painting in particular, it looks terrible. And you're like, I promise I'm not done.
You those.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, just trust the process. Trust the process. It's not going to look good for a while, but when you get to the end product, you can keep working at it until you like what you have. And then you step back and you go, okay, you know what? I really like that. So it's a process.
That's so encouraging. And I sometimes when I think of some of the stuff we're doing, and I have to remind myself who I'm doing it for. I'm doing it for the Lord. Ultimately, the goal is to reach souls, but for him to be able to use that. And sometimes I picture myself as that child handing it up to him so he can put it on the refrigerator door. And I know that when I look back on it 30 years from now, it's probably not going to be my finest work, but it might be his favorite because that represented the most purest aspect of Daddy, do you like this? And for him being able to say, you made this for me. Of course, I love it. And I just love the way that you kind of shared and encouraged others who feel a similar calling, but just don't feel confident in those first few takes to keep on trying, keep embellishing on it and making it something. One of the things you talked about, the niche that you're in, that's amazing, is the fact that you do this together. And that is an incredible differentiator for a lot of content creators out there, that you both have this same shared vision to work on this together. I think that's so special. How does doing this and working together in this shared ministry impact your relationship with each other? Like, this is obviously something that you're working on, but do you find that it also supplements and strengthens your relationship because of this?
I feel it adds another layer to our relationship. I call ourselves a power duo, if you will, because we're not only a nerd couple and we have fun, off camera and off the podcast, and we do other things that aren't related to animation. But when we come in this studio, which is really just my home office, yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So when we come to the space, we have a lot of fun. Rebecca will tell you there are some times when she's just not in a good mood or has just had like a long day, but she knows that we have to, that we have the room, we have the schedule, and we come in here, we talk about it, and her mood improves, the further we get along in the episode. And at the end of it, she's like, I'm really glad we kept doing this, that we didn't say, oh, we'll just take tonight off or what have you.
Oh yeah, our most popular, Josh mentioned it earlier, our most popular episode, Joseph King of Dreams. Um, I mean, it was just, yeah, it was that one, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
I was in a really bad mood before. You know what's silly is because I was wanting to do more Bible study because I wanted to like really be able to um talk about the Bible story and how it was different from that. And yeah, it turned out to be such a fantastic conversation. So I would definitely say our relationship has improved a lot. And it's making us doing this podcast has actually really helped our our devotional life, I would say, and our knowledge and engagement with the Bible because it's not sometimes we can get lost, I think, in just like the day-to-day living, doing what you're doing, and then forget to pick up the Bible. Well, by doing this project, particularly together, it forces us then to read the Bible and to get more material because we don't want to just be saying the same thing over and over and over again. It's important to not just for the podcast, but for our daily lives. But yeah, I would definitely say that it has strengthened our relationship for sure.
and bouncing off of that a little bit, it's also caused me to also do more independent study and actually journal. I've never been a big journaler, but Rebecca has that's like her thing that
I love
she loves to
journaling.
do. So we haven't done 100% on schedule recently, but what we like to do is we like to come down in the mornings before work or during a lunch break or something like that, and um, both read together a certain number of verses out of a book and then kind of take time to just journal that, share our thoughts about it, and usually go verse by verse and see what we each get out of it. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's vastly different, but that also helps us within this project, where I may not have thought about things that Becca thought of, and vice versa.
And that's the amazing thing. I think that brains for this specific ministry, another layer to the messaging is how this is impacting your personal devotional life as well as your relationship. And so many times when even in Christians, let's admit, there's relationship struggles and aspects, and we also sometimes don't balance our biblical study the way that we'd like to, not because we don't want to, but because, as you mentioned, you have to be very intentional about it. And what I love is this project brings all of those things together, strengthening your relationship, giving you a shared vision for what you know the Lord has called you to do in your lives. And you get to do those fun things that you really enjoy, like watching these animated features and speaking to it. So you mentioned a couple that you really liked. Is there one specific episode? If someone has seen this for the first time, they've never experienced your ministry yet, and you were going to say, if you got to see one, what's the one that you would say, and I'd like both of you, it could be different, that could be fun. What's the one that you would say, this is, if you were only going to watch one, it'd be this?
Oh,
And
that's a
that's hard. I mean, the easy answer is the one we've talked about that's our most popular for some reason. I mean, it's a good
Well, I
episode.
mean, if we're honest, it's the most popular because it has my famous paraphrasing joke in it. That's what saved it.
Yeah, Josh, it was definitely all you. And that one was a good one.
Yeah.
Um, Our more recent stuff is good.
Yeah, I feel our more recent stuff is a little bit more polished. Um, hmm.
I really enjoyed My Happy Marriage,
Oh yeah,
talking
that we
with
did with
the
that.
Anime Sekai
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
they were great to have on.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. All of our guests are amazing. We love our guests.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I would say now this was actually before episode 10, but we had a great conversation. So, Laura A. Grace, who is known as Laura Needs Manga, as her social handles, she was our first ever guest, and we talked about Spirited Away, and it was our first time having a guest on the podcast, but it just felt very natural, very organic, the conversation. So I would actually suggest that as a one of our earlier episodes that if you're going to listen to something to see how we interact with others, that would be the one to listen to. As a second one with just us, um, I would actually, yeah, I would say just a King of Dreams, because again, that's kind of where it all switched, and we've been going out there ever since.
And so what is, yeah, I'm sure you sound very intentional about your, what is the next one that you're working on? What are we looking forward to seeing from you next? What are you excited about?
Oh gosh,
We've got several that are
we
really
got
exciting
several,
coming up.
yeah. The next one that we are doing that will actually be coming out here pretty soon will be Pippi Longstocking, the 1997 animated film.
That one will be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I have
We're
no
not
idea why you would choose
about.
a red-headed heroine character for, I mean, I don't know how you'd possibly relate. So
Exactly.
We were actually gonna wait and do it on like National Redhead Day. But I'm like, no, let's just, do it
we have a
like
day. I didn't even know we had it all this time. I didn't know.
Yeah, we do. There's a whole in where is it held? Somewhere in the UK. I think it's like Scotland or England or somewhere. There's like
Somewhere
a
in the shade because of, the challenges around the sun. Okay.
100%. We gotta be in the shade. Everyone's walking around with a parasol or something. Yeah. But yeah, there's like a whole festival for redheads, and people like flock all over the world to this place. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, regarding future episodes, what you'll see here in the coming weeks and months, we'll be doing a revisitation to The Secret of Kells. We actually have somebody from the UK who's doing a project who will be talking about that. We'll be talking about some haiku with actually Laura.
So
We'll be
excited.
talking about that coming up pretty soon as well. So we just have a lot of things come down the pipeline that we're really excited about. We hope everyone else is excited to see as well. We also have a project that we talked about on our socials, which is a sleep devotional called Psalms for Sleep. It is a recording of all the Psalms read by Rebecca, and it is just a devotional. It'll be free on our website to download um, once that gets revamped. So we hope to have that out by the end of summer this year. So that is another project that we're really excited about.
That is some really cool stuff to work on. So as we wrap up, just in case someone missed it at the beginning, how would we follow you? How do we find you? Where are you at? Share us with your handles and whatnot, so that way we can continue to follow you.
Yeah. So really easy. We are at Anilujah Podcast, ANILUJAH podcast. And we are on YouTube. We're on most active on Instagram. We have Facebook. We're on Threads. Just recently started TikTok, and um, we try to make this known on each episode, but for our podcast, we have a audio and a video version. And generally, the video version on YouTube is the full conversation. So you'll actually get to hear a little bit more of what's not included in the audio version. So it gives people an incentive to check out the YouTube channel. And we'll start doing more on our YouTube channel, thinking about doing a few like let's watch things, some reactions, so a lot of things that are coming down the pipeline that we're really excited about.
So the YouTube is the director's cut for all. So if
Yeah,
you like it and
that's
you
right.
wanted the extended
Yes.
Lord of the Rings experience or walking trees, this is going to be where you find.
That's right. That's right.
So fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to get to learn more about your ministry. Please give them a follow, sign up for YouTube subscribing, and make sure that you are following this lovely couple as they continue to share the message of Christ through the unique lens of animation. Thank you for joining us. We're finding God in video games. Anilujah, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing all the content you're going to create for months to come.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.